And one thing you said that I think is probably the most important thing is you found the answer. You had clarity on this is why this is happening. And I think when people are like trying to develop and grow, they sometimes might reach a point, myself included, I've been there before, that you reach a point that I'm doing all the right things, but there's something that's still affecting me and I don't know why. And that is the biggest, I think, frustration for a lot of people. So
Mm.
how would you start? What advice would you give someone to start figuring out what is that like question mark? How do we start answering those questions?
I don't think there is a clear answer with that. It's just trying a different approach and experimenting, trusting the advice you receive from professionals like doctors, that they can recommend something based on science, and but also to trust yourself, to see what's coming up for you, and then you take it one day at a time. It's important to, because like one part of my uh, the framework that I, let's say, created for inner peace, because for me, coming with from the logical perspective, inner peace is can be abstract. So what I had a question: what can make it easier for people to relate to and to have some practical steps to take action, right?
Yeah.
And for me, the ABC was agreements, boundaries, conversations. So the agreements are when we understand our needs, we understand ourselves, and then we can speak out loud that. And if we are in a relationship or at work, we create clear agreements with the other person, understanding what their needs are, what their wants, and together having that understanding that this is our goal. Let's see how we can work together to achieve it. And then the boundaries are very important for inner peace, because most of us, we are not taught as kids how to create strong boundaries and how to keep them,
Mm.
how to teach others how to keep the boundaries. Because like in the end of the day, what are the relationships? We're pushing our boundaries all the time to see what's okay, what's not okay. When the other person reacts, well, we know that's the boundary. So it's important to have that self-awareness, to get curious, to see what's actually a non-negotiable for me. Are
Mm.
specific words a non-negotiable for you? Like for me, the vocabulary that I'm using is very, I mean, there's certain words I don't allow, I don't use them with myself, and I don't allow others. And if they cross the boundary, I gently ask them for not repeating it a second time, right?
Mm.
Because how would they know? They wouldn't, unless I'm the one brave and courageous to communicate that boundary.
And then there was one more part, the C,
The conversations,
the
yes.
conversations. Okay.
With conversation, it's just like noticing which conversations are draining you and which are energizing. So energizing is like what we're having now. Very fun, interesting conversation. We
Yeah.
we feel the energy bubbling. And the draining ones might be those where there's some gossip involved, there's some drama, nagging, ranting. And of course, if we want to respect the other person's boundary, we can create an agreement saying, let's take 5 minutes to rant, vent, whatever you need to release that buildup of energy, because we don't want to dismiss it, like positives, or like being happy all the time, or not acknowledging the even the hard feelings
Yeah.
that we might experience. So we can create a container for that, but maybe 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, which is a bit pushing, but let's say 15 in the middle, right? And then you know that you are receiving that without letting it affecting you.
Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you shift the conversation. Okay, we've released that. Let's focus on creating some solution for that problem.
Mm.
And then we're gonna get into an energizing conversation.
For sure. I really like that. I really like that framework. It's very simple, very easy to understand, and I think the three elements play perfectly together because setting the boundaries, like you said, is super important. But we need to know, like you correctly said, what do I need? What do you need? What are our expectations of each other? That's, I think, super important to understand.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can start setting the boundaries based on that, and then a conversation comes after. I think that's a really, really good framework, and especially at work, because I think work is the place where might be one of the places that is probably very difficult to set boundaries, especially not maybe in the people that you're working with that are on your level, but like with higher level people and how like they would talk to you and how they might, say things sometimes that, you might not be comfortable with. So what advice would you give to someone like in a working environment and applying that framework to someone that's probably higher up than them? How do you start doing it with them? Because that might be a bit more tricky.
Well, keeping the tone definitely polite and diplomatic, it's always helping. And stating your intentions that you want to do this exercise for the purpose of bettering the relationship, to creating value for the company. So framing it in this context, the other person can relax and can take in your message, right? Because if we get defensive, our brain shuts down. We don't hear anything else because we're there to defend ourselves. So having that context, and I found it because I've did this exercise with a company at like the highest level. And when you're just like the one facilitating the conversation is open, is like, this is, we're human beings in the end of the day. We might not know these things. So we're here to create something positive for the company. And it was so not surprising, but it was nice to hear that when people heard each other's boundaries and the agreements, they were more willing to help each other do that together
Mm.
as a team. So that was like having a facilitator, or even having this recording playback uh, to guide the conversation. Why not?
Yeah. And I think what you said is very interesting about the feedback that you got when you ran, those kind of workshops and so on with companies, and the I guess the awareness that between people, I think doing that exercise, you start to understand each other more. Like, oh, I didn't know you think like this. I didn't know that was a boundary for you. I didn't know,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I was affecting you negatively, but I had no idea. So I think that's a really useful exercise and I think in any relationship, that exercise is very applicable because,
Yeah.
romantic, friendship, whatever, because sometimes it's very easy for the lines to be blurred and things to be crossed. So that just makes it very like structured and very easy to follow. So I think it's awesome. I think it's a great framework.